Have you ever wondered what you'd say to the person who broke your heart if you saw them again after 10 years? The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I stared at the signature on the contract my boss had just slid across the mahogany conference table. My eyes traced the bold, confident letters I hadn't seen in a decade. Letters that once signed love notes and birthday cards. Letters that belonged to the man who vanished from my life without explanation on a rainy October night when I was 22 years old. Ms. Parker, are you feeling all right? Gerald's voice cut through the buzzing in my ears. You look like you've seen a ghost. I forced my gaze up from the name that haunted me. Marcus Chen. The Marcus Chen was acquiring our mid-sized marketing firm, and I was apparently about to become one of his employees. I'm fine, I managed, setting down the glass before I dropped it. Just surprised by the timeline. 3 weeks seems fast for this kind of transition. Gerald, my boss of 5 years, nodded enthusiastically. Chen Industries doesn't waste time. Their reputation for turning companies around is legendary. We're lucky they chose us. He studied my face more carefully. Are you sure you're okay, Kate? You've gone pale. How could I explain that the tech mogul buying our company was my first love? The brilliant computer science student who'd shared my dorm floor at the University of Washington, who'd spent countless nights studying with me in coffee shops, who'd kissed me under the cherry blossoms at the Quad and promised we'd take on the world together. The same person who, 3 months before graduation, told me he was moving to Silicon Valley immediately and couldn't see me anymore, offering no real explanation beyond "it's complicated" and "you deserve better than what I can give you." I'm fine, I repeated, gathering my things. Just need some air. I made it to the parking garage before the tears started. 10 years. 10 years of building a life, of dating other people, of convincing myself I was over Marcus Chen and whatever we'd had. 10 years of wondering what I'd done wrong, what had changed between one perfect weekend and the Monday. He looked at me with eyes full of something I couldn't name, and walked away. My phone buzzed. My younger sister, Sophie. Hey, what's up? I answered, wiping my eyes. Are you sitting down? Sophie's voice was tight with barely contained excitement. Because I have news, and you're going to freak out. Sophie, I really can't handle any more surprises today. I'm engaged! I felt my heart lift despite everything. Sophie was my favorite person in the world, the one who'd held me while I cried over Marcus, who'd dragged me to parties and set me up on dates and refused to let me become cynical about love. Oh my God, when? How? Tell me everything. Last night at Cary Park, he had them light up the Space Needle with a message. Kate, it was so romantic I actually cried. And you know I never cry. She paused. Wait, why did you sound weird when you answered? What happened? I leaned against my car, debating how much to say. Remember Marcus? Marcus Chen? Your college ex who ghosted you? The one I've wanted to punch in the face for 10 years? What about him? His company just bought the firm. He's going to be my boss. The silence on the other end lasted approximately 3 seconds. No way. That's not happening. You're quitting right now, today. I'll support you until you find something else. Sophie, I can't just quit. I have a mortgage, student loans, and honestly, I took a deep breath. Maybe this is what I need. Closure, or whatever the therapy podcasts call it. A chance to finally understand what happened. Or a chance to get your heart broken all over again, Sophie said quietly. Kate, you're my big sister, and I love you. But you never got over him. Not really. Every guy you've dated since has been measured against Marcus Chen and found wanting, whether you admit it or not. I wanted to argue, but the truth of her words settled in my chest like a stone. I know, I whispered. Okay, new plan, Sophie said, her voice brightening with forced cheerfulness. You're coming to dinner on Sunday. We're celebrating the engagement, and you're going to help me plan the wedding. Nothing says I'm completely over my ex like enthusiastically discussing flower arrangements and seating charts. I laughed despite myself. Deal. And Sophie, congratulations. I'm really happy for you. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then I pulled out my laptop and did what I'd forbidden myself from doing for years. I Googled Marcus Chen. The results were overwhelming. Articles about his meteoric rise in Silicon Valley, his company's innovative AI-driven marketing platform, his reputation as a demanding but fair CEO who'd made several of his early employees millionaires. Photos of him at tech conferences, always in his signature dark suits, looking older and more serious than the boy I'd known, but still heartbreakingly familiar. His dark hair was shorter now, professional, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at 22. But that smile, rare in the photos but devastating when it appeared, was exactly the same. One article caught my attention. A profile from last year titled, "The Reluctant CEO, Why Marcus Chen Almost Walked Away from Success." I clicked on it, scanning quickly. "I nearly gave up everything in my mid-20s," Chen is quoted as saying. "I had to make some difficult choices about what kind of life I could have, what I could offer people I cared about. For a while, I thought the answer was nothing." When asked what changed his perspective, Chen becomes uncharacteristically quiet. "Someone once told me that running away from fear isn't the same as being brave. I eventually realized she was right." My hands shook as I closed the laptop. Someone. Had he been talking about me? About us? The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and obsessive preparation. I rehearsed speeches I'd never give, practiced looking professionally distant in my bathroom mirror, and changed my first day outfit 7 times before settling on a charcoal gray suit that said, "Competent professional who definitely isn't thinking about her ex-boyfriend." Monday morning arrived with Seattle's typical November drizzle. I grabbed my extra-large coffee and headed into the office 45 minutes early, hoping to settle at my desk before the chaos of the transition began. The elevator doors opened on the 12th floor, and I stepped out, already mentally running through my project list. I made it 3 steps before nearly colliding with someone coming around the corner. "I'm so sorry." I looked up and the apology died in my throat. Marcus Chen stood less than 2 feet away, a coffee cup in one hand and a messenger bag over his shoulder. He'd frozen mid-step, his dark eyes locked on mine with an expression I couldn't read. "Kate," he said, and my name in his voice after 10 years made something in my chest crack open. "Marcus." I stepped back, needing distance, needing air, needing my racing heart to slow down. "I didn't think you'd be here this early. The announcement said you'd be meeting with department heads at 10. I couldn't sleep." He ran his free hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it physically hurt to witness. "Kate, I didn't know you worked here. Not until after the acquisition was finalized. If I had known, you wouldn't have bought the company?" I kept my voice level, professional. "That seems like poor business practice." "No, He stopped, something flickering across his face. "I would have prepared better, made sure you knew beforehand. This must be a shock." "You could say that." I moved to walk past him. "If you'll excuse me, I have work to—" "Kate, wait." His hand didn't quite touch my arm, but I felt the heat of it anyway. "Can we talk? Not here? Not now? But soon? There are things I need to explain. Things I should have explained 10 years ago." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The expensive suit and the confidence couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. Whatever his reasons had been for leaving, I realized with surprise they'd cost him something too. "Maybe," I said finally. "But right now, I need to get ready for my day, and you have a company to learn about." His lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Still the practical one. "Someone has to be." I walked away before I could do something foolish like ask all the questions burning in my throat. Before I could notice the way his eyes followed me, or the way my hands still shook as I unlocked my office door. The morning meeting was professional torture. Marcus addressed the entire company, outlining his vision for the transition, promising job security and growth opportunities. He was compelling, charismatic in a reserved way that made people lean forward to catch every word. This was Marcus Chen, the CEO, and he was magnetic in a way that college Marcus, brilliant as he'd been, had only hinted at. I took notes diligently, avoided eye contact, and tried not to think about the fact that I'd once kissed that mouth, once known exactly what made him laugh at 2 a.m. when we were both delirious from studying. Ms. Parker. I looked up to find Marcus addressing me directly, the entire room's attention suddenly focused on me. Yes, Mr. Chen? I understand you're heading our digital content strategy. I'd like to schedule a one-on-one this week to discuss your current projects and future plans. Of course, I'll have my assistant coordinate with yours. Our eyes met across the crowded conference room, and for just a second, I saw past the professional mask to something raw and uncertain underneath. Then it was gone, replaced by the polished CEO smile he was giving everyone. The meeting ended, and I escaped to my office, closing the door perhaps too firmly. My assistant, Jamie, knocked 30 seconds later. So, Jamie said, sprawling in the chair across from my desk with the casual comfort of someone who'd become a friend over 3 years of working together. That's your Marcus Chen. I looked up sharply. My what? Please. You went white as a sheet when you saw his name on that contract Friday. Then you show up today looking like you're preparing for battle, and the two of you spent that entire meeting pretending the other doesn't exist, while somehow being hyper-aware of every move the other made. Jamie grinned. I majored in psychology before I got into admin work. I know unresolved romantic tension when I see it. There's nothing unresolved, I said firmly. We dated briefly in college. It ended, that's all. And if I believe that, I suppose you'll tell me you're not currently Googling his entire life story. I closed my laptop guiltily. I'm doing research on our new CEO. It's professional due diligence. Sure it is. Jamie stood, heading for the door. For what it's worth, he looked at you the same way you looked at him, like he's seeing a ghost, or maybe a second chance. After Jamie left, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting. What did Marcus want to talk about? Why now, after 10 years of silence? And why had he looked at me like that in the conference room, like he was memorizing my face? My phone buzzed with a calendar invitation. One-on-one with Marcus Chen, Wednesday at 3 p.m. Location, his office, 2 days. I had 2 days to prepare to sit across from the man who broke my heart and listen to whatever explanation he thought could possibly matter after all this time. The 2 days passed both too quickly and not quickly enough. I threw myself into work, staying late Monday and Tuesday, partly because I had actual projects that needed attention, and partly because keeping busy kept me from overthinking. Wednesday morning, I woke up from dreams I couldn't quite remember. Fragments of memory and fantasy tangled together. Cherry blossoms, Marcus's laugh, the way he used to solve complex coding problems on napkins while we shared late-night fries at the diner near campus. I dressed carefully in a navy blue dress that was professional, but made me feel confident, added my grandmother's pearl earrings for courage, and arrived at work 30 minutes early. The day crawled by. I reviewed reports, responded to emails, and attended a strategy meeting where I presented quarterly metrics without stumbling once. I was proud of my composure right up until 2:45 p.m., when I found myself in the bathroom, checking my makeup for the 3rd time. You're a professional, I told my reflection. This is a business meeting. You can handle this. My reflection didn't look convinced. At 2:58, I took the elevator to the 14th floor, where Marcus had taken over the former CEO's office. The space had been transformed. The heavy traditional furniture was gone, replaced with clean modern pieces. The walls, once covered in achievement plaques and golf photos, now held abstract art and a single shelf of books. Marcus's assistant, a efficient-looking woman in her 50s named Patricia, smiled at me. "Ms. Parker, Mr. Chen is expecting you. Go right in." I knocked once and entered. Marcus stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the gray afternoon sky. He turned when I entered, and the carefully neutral expression he'd worn all week cracked slightly. "Kate, thank you for coming. You're my boss. I didn't think it was optional." I kept my voice light, professional. "Right, yes." He moved to the conference table in the corner of his office, not the desk, which somehow felt more personal, less formal. "Please sit." I did, placing my portfolio in front of me like a shield. Marcus sat across from me, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I don't know how to start," he said finally. "The beginning usually works." He almost smiled at that. "The beginning. Okay." He took a breath. "Do you remember the weekend before I left? When we went hiking up to Rattlesnake Ledge?" I remembered. It had been early October, the leaves turning gold and red, the air crisp with the promise of winter. We'd packed sandwiches and spent the day climbing, talking about graduation and what came next. Marcus had been quieter than usual, thoughtful in a way that I'd attributed to stress about his thesis. "I remember," I said quietly. "I found out that morning, before we left. I'd been having headaches for months, probably longer, but I'd ignored them. Blamed stress, lack of sleep, too much screen time. My roommate finally convinced me to see a doctor." Marcus's hands were flat on the table, and I watched him press them down, as if grounding himself. They found a tumor, benign, but in a location that made treatment complicated. The floor seemed to drop away beneath me. "What?" "A brain tumor." He said it matter-of-factly, but I could hear the echo of fear underneath. They gave me options. Surgery, which carried significant risks, including memory loss, personality changes, possible motor function impairment, or wait and see, with regular monitoring, medication to manage symptoms, and accept that my life might look very different than I'd planned. I couldn't breathe. "Marcus, I chose surgery, scheduled it for 3 weeks out, which gave me just enough time to finish the semester. But I couldn't." He stopped, swallowed hard. "Kate, you were talking about us moving to San Francisco together, about getting an apartment, building a life, and I was looking at possibly becoming someone who couldn't remember your name, someone who might need constant care, someone who—" "So you just left." The words came out sharper than I intended. "You didn't think I deserved to know? To make my own choice about what I could handle?" I was 22 and terrified. For the first time, real emotion cracked through his composure. I thought I was being noble, sparing you. I told myself you'd be better off thinking I was an asshole who left than trying to take care of someone whose brain was literally falling apart. "That wasn't your decision to make." I stood up, unable to sit still anymore. "You don't get to decide what I can or can't handle, Marcus. You should have told me. You should have trusted me." "I know." He stood too, moving around the table, but not closer. "I know that now. I knew it then, if I'm honest. But I was so scared, Kate. Not of the surgery, of waking up and not knowing who you were, of looking at you and seeing a stranger, of you spending your life taking care of someone who didn't even remember falling in love with you." The anger drained out of me, replaced by something more complicated. "What happened? With the surgery?" "I had it. About a month after I left Seattle. It was successful mostly. They got most of the tumor, and the rest they've been monitoring. I have to take medication, get regular scans. I have some mild short-term memory issues when I'm stressed or tired. Nothing dramatic, but enough to be noticeable. And I have to be careful about overworking, about triggers that could cause complications. But you built a company. You became incredibly successful. I did. He smiled slightly. Turns out facing your own mortality at 22 makes you very focused about what you want to do with whatever time you have. I threw myself into work, into building something that mattered. And I told myself I was happy, that I'd made the right choice. Were you? Happy? The smile faded. No, I was successful. I was accomplished. I made a lot of money and helped build something innovative. But happy? No, Kate. I haven't been happy since the day I walked away from you in that coffee shop and saw your whole world collapse. My throat tightened. Then why didn't you reach out? After the surgery, after you recovered, why didn't you at least tell me you were okay? Because I'm a coward. He said it simply, without self-pity. Because by the time I was ready to explain, a year had passed, then 2, then 5. How do you reach out to someone after that much silence? What do you say? Sorry I ghosted you, I had brain surgery. It sounded like an excuse, a bad one. It's not an excuse, I said quietly. It's a reason, a real one. And I would have understood, Marcus, if you'd just given me the chance. We stood there, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk fell over Seattle, 10 years of silence and hurt between us. For what it's worth, Marcus said, I never stopped thinking about you, wondering what you were doing, if you were happy, if you'd found someone who could give you everything I thought I couldn't. When I saw your name on the employee list after the acquisition closed, He trailed off. You what? I hoped. Maybe foolishly, maybe selfishly. But I hoped that maybe enough time had passed. That maybe, if you were willing, we could at least be friends. That I could have some version of you in my life again, even if it wasn't what we had before. I moved to the window, needing to look at something other than his face. The water was dark now, dotted with fairy lights. I don't know if I can do that. Be friends. Be professional colleagues who share polite conversation at company events. I'm not sure I know how to be around you without... I stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence honestly. Without what? I turned to face him. Without remembering how much it hurt. How long it took me to convince myself I was okay without you. How many people I've compared to you without meaning to. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, hope, regret, all tangled together. I never wanted to hurt you. I know, but you did anyway. I gathered my portfolio, suddenly needing to leave before I said something I couldn't take back. I need time to process this, Marcus. All of it. Can we just be professional for now? Boss and employee? Nothing more complicated than that? Whatever you need, he said immediately. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. That was the problem, I thought, as I walked out. He was here, in my building, in my daily life, and I had absolutely no idea how to handle it. Sophie was waiting at my apartment when I got home, armed with Thai food and wine. Jamie texted me, she explained, unpacking containers. Said you looked like you needed emergency sister intervention after your meeting with he who shall not be named. His name is Marcus, and stop colluding with my assistant. But I accepted the wine gratefully and collapsed on my couch. He had a brain tumor. That's why he left. Sophie's hands stilled halfway through opening the pad thai. What? I told her everything, watching her expression cycle through shock, anger, sympathy, and confusion. Okay, she said when I finished. Okay, that's huge. That changes things. Does it? I asked. He still left. He still made the decision to shut me out instead of letting me in. He was 22 and terrified he was dying, Sophie said gently. Can you honestly say you would have handled it better at that age? That you wouldn't have panicked and made bad choices? I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. At 22, I'd barely been able to handle choosing a career path, let alone facing my own mortality. This doesn't mean you have to forgive him, Sophie continued, or take him back, or even be friends. But maybe it means you can let go of some of the anger. Stop wondering what you did wrong. That was the thing that had haunted me most, I realized. The question of what I'd done, what I'd been lacking, that made Marcus leave. And now I knew. It had nothing to do with me. He'd been trying to protect me from his own fear. I don't know what to do with this information, I admitted. How do I work with him every day knowing all of this? Carefully, Sophie suggested. And maybe, when you're ready, you have an honest conversation about what you both want now. Not what you wanted 10 years ago, but now. Today. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and I fell into a careful dance. We were professional, courteous, efficient. We had meetings about projects and strategy. We exchanged emails and collaborated on presentations. To anyone watching, we were simply a CEO and his employee with a perfectly normal working relationship. But underneath, tension hummed like a live wire. I caught him watching me during meetings, his expression unguarded for just a moment before he looked away. I found myself doing the same, noticing details, how he still drummed his fingers when he was thinking, how he took his coffee black now instead of loaded with cream and sugar, how he stood just a little too long at my office door before knocking, as if gathering courage. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I stayed late finishing a report. The office was mostly empty, the cleaning crew already making their rounds, when I heard a knock on my door. Marcus stood in the doorway, tie loosened, looking as tired as I felt. I saw your light on. You're here late. Product launch tomorrow. I wanted to make sure everything was ready. He nodded, but didn't leave. Kate, I was wondering. My company is doing a volunteer day at the food bank on Saturday, before Thanksgiving. I know it's last minute, but we could use more people, and I thought... He trailed off. You used to love volunteering. I had. Marcus and I had spent one Saturday a month at various volunteer sites, calling it our karma work. It was one of the things I'd loved about him. That underneath the brilliant mind and ambitious drive, he genuinely wanted to make things better. I'm supposed to help Sophie with wedding stuff, I said. Right, of course, sorry, But I could probably do both. What time? The surprise and pleasure on his face made something in my chest ache. Really? 8 to noon. At the main facility in Sodo. I'll be there. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear, the first frost of the season coating car windows. I bundled up in jeans, my oldest sweater, and a jacket, arriving at the food bank to find about 20 people from Chen Industries already sorting donations. Marcus stood near the loading dock, talking to the facility manager. He'd dressed down, too. Jeans, a thermal shirt, work gloves. It was strange and familiar at once, seeing him like this instead of in his CEO uniform. He looked up, caught my eye, and smiled. A real smile, the kind I remembered from college, the kind that made his whole face transform. Kate, I'm glad you came. He introduced me to the facility manager, then to several of his employees, most of whom I recognized from meetings. We're sorting through a bulk donation today, organizing by type and checking expiration dates. Pretty straightforward work. We fell into a rhythm, working side by side at a long table, sorting cans and boxes. Around us, people chatted and laughed. But Marcus and I worked in comfortable silence, occasionally exchanging comments about questionable expiration dates or particularly enthusiastic canned vegetable donors. Remember when we tried to organize that campus food drive? Marcus said suddenly, holding up a can of creamed corn. And we ended up with approximately 1,000 cans of green beans because someone put the wrong flyer up? I laughed, surprised by the memory surfacing. And we had to get creative with recipes. You made that green bean casserole that was actually terrible, but we all pretended to love it because you'd worked so hard on it. It was terrible, he agreed. I have no idea what I was thinking with the potato chip crust. You were thinking you were 20 and invincible, and could make anything work through sheer determination. That sounds about right. He set down the can, his expression turning more serious. I miss that. Us. The way we were together. Not just the romantic stuff, but this. The easy parts. The comfortable silences and shared jokes and knowing what the other person was thinking without having to say it. My hands stilled on the box I was unpacking. Marcus, I'm not trying to pressure you, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know, in case it matters. It matters, I said quietly, but I'm still figuring out what to do with it. He nodded, accepting that, and we went back to work. At noon, when the volunteer shift ended, Marcus walked me to my car. Thank you for coming, he said. It meant a lot. To me, I mean. Thank you for inviting me. I unlocked my car, then turned back. Marcus, can I ask you something? About your health. He tensed slightly, but nodded. Are you okay? Now, I mean. Is the tumor? Are you safe? His expression softened. I'm okay. I get scanned every 6 months, take medication daily, manage my stress levels. The chances of recurrence are low. I'm not dying, Kate. I'm just someone who has to be a little more careful than most people. Relief washed through me, stronger than I expected. Good. That's good. Were you worried about me? He asked, and there was something vulnerable in the question. Of course I was worried about you, you idiot. The words came out more vehemently than I intended. You think I can just turn off caring about you because of some time and distance? You think hearing you had a brain tumor didn't scare me, even now, even after everything? I hadn't meant to admit that, but once the words were out, I couldn't take them back. Marcus moved closer, and I let him. I'm sorry. For all of it. For leaving. For not trusting you with the truth. For wasting 10 years we could have had. We were kids, I said, echoing my sister's words. Scared kids who didn't know how to handle something this big. And now? He reached out slowly, giving me time to step back if I wanted to, and touched my hand where it rested on the car door. What are we now? I looked at our hands, his fingers just barely brushing mine. I don't know yet, but maybe we could find out. Slowly, carefully. No pressure, no expectations. Just seeing what happens. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. I would like that very much. We stood there in the parking lot, hands almost but not quite holding, as a cold breeze scattered dried leaves around us, and the city hummed with pre-holiday traffic. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't a declaration, wasn't any of the grand romantic gestures from movies, but it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough. Thanksgiving came and went. I spent it with my family, fielding questions about my new boss from my mother, who'd read about the acquisition in the paper, and knowing looks from Sophie, who'd been updated on every development. Marcus and I started having coffee together once a week. Not dates. We were careful not to call them that. Just conversations. We talked about work at first, then gradually branched into other topics. Books we were reading, movies we'd seen, the 10 years of life we'd spent apart. I learned that he'd almost gotten engaged once, to a fellow tech entrepreneur, but had called it off when he realized he was settling for companionship instead of love. He learned that I'd dated casually but never seriously, always finding reasons why it wouldn't work. You were looking for me, he said one morning, in that blunt way he had of speaking truths I wanted to avoid. Maybe, I admitted. Or maybe I was looking for what we had. The connection, the ease, the feeling that someone really saw me. I always saw you, Kate, even when I was too afraid to let you see me. December arrived with characteristic Seattle rain. The office transformed for the holidays, and Marcus proved to be unexpectedly enthusiastic about the decorations, insisting on a real tree for the lobby and organizing a charity toy drive. "You've gotten festive in your old age," I teased him during the decorating party. "I have a lot of holidays to make up for," he said, carefully hanging an ornament. "I spent too many years working through them, using business as an excuse to avoid feeling lonely." The vulnerability in that admission made my heart ache. "And this year I have something to celebrate. Someone to celebrate with if she'll have me." I looked at him, this man who was both familiar and new, who'd broken my heart and was carefully trying to mend it, piece by piece. "I think she will." The company Christmas party was held at a hotel downtown, complete with dancing and an open bar, and enough forced cheerfulness to make the whole thing slightly uncomfortable. I debated attending at all, but Sophie had insisted, even helping me pick out a dress. Deep green velvet that made me feel both confident and nervous. I arrived fashionably late, slipping into the ballroom just as dinner was being served. I'd been seated with my team, mercifully far from the executive table where Marcus sat with his leadership team. I could see him from across the room, looking uncomfortable in his tux, checking his phone more than engaging in conversation. Midway through dessert, my phone buzzed with a text. "Marcus. Having a terrible time. These shoes are killing me, and the person next to me is explaining cryptocurrency mining. Save me?" I smiled despite myself. Me. I thought CEOs loved talking about cryptocurrency. "Marcus. I'm a bad CEO. I'd rather be talking to you." Before I could respond, he was standing from his table, excusing himself. A minute later, another text. "Marcus. Meet me on the balcony, the one overlooking the water. I need to show you something." I shouldn't have gone. It was probably inappropriate, definitely gossip-inducing. But I found myself excusing myself from my table and heading for the balcony anyway. Marcus stood at the railing, looking out at the dark water and the lights of the ferries crossing the Sound. The rain had stopped for once, leaving the air clean and cold. "You came," he said, turning as I approached. "You summoned me away from a perfectly good piece of chocolate cake. This better be important." He smiled, but it was nervous, uncertain. "Kate, I've been thinking. About us? About what we're doing. About going slow and being careful." "Okay," I said cautiously. "And I think we're both being idiots." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "We wasted 10 years. 10 years we could have had together, that we lost to fear and bad timing and choices we can't undo." He moved closer, and I could see his hands shaking slightly. "I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want to be careful or slow or safe. I want you, Kate. The way I wanted you 10 years ago. The way I've wanted you every day since, even when I tried to convince myself I'd moved on." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. "Marcus, I know it's only been a few weeks. I know we're technically boss and employee, and this could get complicated. I know I hurt you, and I know trust doesn't rebuild overnight." He reached out, cupping my face in his hands. "But I also know that life is short and uncertain. And the only thing I regret more than leaving you is not fighting harder to get you back. So I'm asking you now, standing here in this ridiculous tux at this awkward party, if you could possibly consider giving me another chance. A real one. Not coffee dates and careful conversations, but actual us, actual together, all in." I searched his face, seeing all the fear and hope and love written there. "You're right," I said finally. "We're being idiots." Then I kissed him. It was like coming home and leaping off a cliff at the same time. His arms came around me, pulling me close, and I could feel him shaking. Or maybe that was me. Or maybe it was both of us, overwhelmed by the weight of all we'd lost and all we were choosing to try again. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I love you," he said. "I never stopped. I tried. God knows I tried. But I couldn't. You're it for me, Kate Parker. You always have been." "I love you too," I whispered back. Even when I was angry, even when I tried to move on, it was always you. We stood there, wrapped around each other on a balcony overlooking Elliott Bay, as the city glittered around us and the party continued inside, forgotten. "So," Marcus said eventually, "I should probably mention that dating in the workplace requires some HR paperwork." I laughed, the sound bubbling up unexpectedly. "Of course it does. How romantic. I'll make it up to you. I'm thinking flowers, fancy dinners, the whole works. How about you start with introducing me properly at the party, as your girlfriend, not just your employee?" His smile was incandescent. I would love nothing more. We walked back inside hand in hand. Let people talk. Let them speculate. For 10 years I'd been careful, been safe, been someone who protected her heart by never fully opening it. But life was too short for that. Marcus had taught me that, in the worst and best way possible. Sophie's wedding was in March, a small affair at a vineyard outside the city. Marcus was my date, officially now, no more hiding or pretending. We'd navigated the HR requirements, endured the inevitable office gossip, and emerged stronger for it. "I still can't believe you two are back together," Sophie said as I helped her adjust her veil before the ceremony. "It's like something out of a romance novel." "Life is like a romance novel sometimes," I said. "The good ones anyway. The ones where people make mistakes but figure it out in the end." "Are you happy?" she asked, turning to look at me seriously. "Really, truly happy?" I thought about Marcus, about the life we were building together, about the way he left notes on my mirror and made me laugh and challenged me to be braver, about how he'd told me last week that his latest scan was clear, and how we'd celebrated by dancing in the kitchen at midnight, about how he'd talked about the future, our future, without fear. "Yes," I said, "I really am." The ceremony was beautiful, all spring flowers and sunshine. During the reception, Marcus and I danced, swaying to music that was probably too fast for slow dancing, but neither of us cared. "Sophie asked me something interesting," Marcus said, his voice low near my ear. "Oh?" "She wanted to know my intentions, regarding you. Very protective, your little sister." I pulled back to look at his face. "And what did you tell her?" "That I intend to marry you. Eventually. When you're ready. That I intend to spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost. That I intend to be honest and present and brave enough to let you love me, even when I'm scared." Tears pricked my eyes. "Those are good intentions." "I thought so." He spun me out and back in, making me laugh. "So, what do you think? Could you see yourself marrying someone who has to take daily medication and get regular brain scans and sometimes forgets where he put his keys?" "I could see myself marrying someone who makes me laugh and challenges me to be better and looks at me like I'm the most important person in the world," I said. "The rest is just details." "Good, because I bought a ring last week. It's sitting in my dresser drawer, waiting for the right moment." My heart stuttered. "Marcus, don't panic. I'm not proposing now. I'm just telling you, because we promised to be honest with each other. I bought a ring because I'm sure, Kate. Completely, entirely sure. And when you're ready, when the moment is right, I'll ask you properly." I stood on my toes and kissed him, there in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by other couples and celebration, and the beautiful chaos of a wedding. "I'm already ready," I whispered against his lips, "but I appreciate the patience." 3 months later, on a Saturday morning, we went hiking up to Rattlesnake Ledge. The same trail we'd climbed 10 years before, when Marcus's world was falling apart and I didn't know it. We reached the top as the sun was rising, painting the mountains pink and gold. Marcus spread out a blanket, and we sat watching the light change, drinking coffee from a thermos and eating the granola bars he'd packed. "I've been thinking about this moment for weeks," he said finally, planning what I'd say, how I'd ask. I even wrote it down, practiced in front of the mirror like a nervous teenager. "And?" I prompted, smiling. "And now that we're here, none of it seems right. All the clever words and romantic speeches." He pulled the ring box from his jacket pocket, opening it to reveal a simple diamond on a white gold band. "So I'm just going to be honest instead. Kate Parker, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. The first time and the second time and every time in between. You make me brave. You make me want to be better. You make me believe that life isn't about playing it safe. It's about choosing love even when it's scary. Will you marry me?" I looked at the ring, at his face, at the sunrise painting the world in new light. I thought about the girl I'd been at 22, heartbroken and confused. I thought about the woman I'd become in 10 years of learning to be whole on my own. And I thought about the future we could have together, built on honesty and second chances and the courage to try again. "Yes," I said. "Absolutely, completely, yes." He slipped the ring on my finger, and we kissed as the sun rose higher, turning the lake below into a mirror of light. When we finally pulled apart, both laughing and crying at once, I felt something I hadn't felt in 10 years. Complete. 6 months later, on a Saturday in October, we got married at the same vineyard where Sophie had married Tyler. It was small, just family and close friends, exactly what we both wanted. My father walked me down the aisle, my mother cried, and Sophie stood beside me as my maid of honor, grinning like she'd personally arranged the whole thing. Adam, Marcus's assistant and friend, served as his best man, making a speech that had everyone laughing and crying in equal measure. But my favorite moment came during our first dance, when Marcus pulled me close and whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For giving me a second chance. For being braver than I was. For believing we were worth fighting for." He kissed my temple. For proving that some love stories don't end. They just pause, waiting for the right moment to continue. I thought about those 10 years we'd spent apart, how they'd shaped us, taught us, prepared us for this second chance, and I realized they hadn't been wasted time after all. They'd been necessary time. Time to grow, to heal, to become people who were ready for the kind of love we were choosing now. "This is our moment," I said. "This right now, this life we're building. This is when our story really begins." He smiled. That smile that had first captured my heart in a college dorm and had recaptured it a decade later in a Seattle office. "Then let's make it a good one." And we did. 5 years later, on a sunny afternoon in June, I stood in the backyard of the house we'd bought together in the Ballard neighborhood, watching Marcus push our 3-year-old daughter Emma on the swing set we'd installed last summer. "Higher, Daddy! Higher!" she shrieked with delight. "Any higher and you'll fly away," he called back, but pushed her a little higher anyway. I rested my hand on my stomach, where baby number 2 was currently making my internal organs into a kickboxing arena, and smiled. Life wasn't perfect. Marcus still had to be careful about his health, still had occasional short-term memory issues when he was stressed, still got nervous before his semi-annual scans. I still sometimes woke up from dreams of him leaving, ghosts of old hurts that occasionally surfaced. But we'd learned to talk through the fear, to trust each other with the hard stuff, to choose each other even on the difficult days. We'd built a life that was messy and real and absolutely worth fighting for. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Still on for dinner tonight? Tyler is making his famous lasagna." I typed back a confirmation, just as Marcus and Emma headed toward me, Emma chattering about the cloud that looked like a dinosaur. There's Mommy, Marcus said, swinging Emma up onto his shoulders. Should we tell her the news? Tell me what news? I asked, already suspicious. We're getting a puppy, Emma announced. Daddy said. I raised an eyebrow at my husband. Daddy said, did he? Marcus had the grace to look sheepish. We talked about it, eventually. I may have jumped the gun on the timeline. You think? But I was smiling. What kind of puppy? A rescue. From the shelter. Emma wants to name her Cherry. After the cherry blossoms, Emma explained seriously. Like in Daddy's story about when you were young. My throat tightened. Marcus told Emma stories sometimes about our first relationship, about the college students who'd fallen in love under the cherry trees. Age-appropriate versions, of course, minus the heartbreak and illness. In his stories, we were simply two people who found each other, lost each other, and found each other again. I think Cherry is a perfect name, I said, pulling them both into a hug. That evening, as we sat around Sophie and Tyler's table, passing food and swapping stories and laughing at terrible jokes, I looked around at the life I'd built. Not the one I'd imagined at 22, but somehow better. Richer. Earned. Marcus caught my eye across the table and smiled, that private smile that was just for me. I smiled back, thinking about the girl I'd been, heartbroken in a Seattle coffee shop, wondering if she'd ever feel whole again. I wanted to tell her. It gets better. The pain doesn't last forever, and sometimes the love stories that hurt the most end up being the ones worth waiting for. But she wouldn't believe me anyway. She'd have to live through it, learn it herself, find her own way to this moment of contentment and chosen family and second chances that became first chances at something even better. What are you thinking about? Marcus asked later, as we drove home, Emma asleep in her car seat. Happy endings, I said, and how they're really just new beginnings. He reached over and took my hand, lacing our fingers together. Here's to beginnings, then. All of them. The first, the second, and all the ones still to come. To beginnings, I agreed. And somewhere in the Seattle night, the city lights sparkled like promises, and the future stretched out before us, full of possibility and love, and the courage to choose each other, again and again and again.